I'm so very, very grateful to be here. First, I'm so grateful that my dear Virginia is here for this great gala day. To use Mr. Huthwaite's wonderful phrase, she is the companion of my years, and I am so grateful that she's here. I'm also so very grateful that our son Mark and our grandson Matthew are here for this great day. I can't possibly begin to tell you the joy that is in my heart for this day. I took out a hand calculator the other day and I multiplied the Sundays without vacation time included, plus the Tuesday break services for the times and months that operated. And I have stood in this sanctuary and preached the gospel over 2,200 times. So I'm grateful that you have given me one more chance to get it right. A lot of you have made special efforts to be here today just because we're here. And I'm so grateful for those of you who twisted calendars around. Even the mail lady who brings the mail to Fort Street, Cynthia, is here today, and I'm so grateful for all that extra effort. The years of retirement, now 12, have been just excellent. A veritable Niagara of God's blessings. A couple years ago, I had a bout with bladder cancer and some major surgery with that, but I'm cancer-free today, and I'm just so very grateful for having come through that with flying colors. And so I think of every day of life as a kind of a doxology. My sermon this morning is based on the lectionary reading for today. The setting is the upper room, Jesus' last meal with his disciples. And when Dr. Olson invited me, I looked at the lectionary readings and I thought to myself, for what this congregation has been through in the last year, this is a wonderful text, a healing text. Losing the Reverend Mark, and then just recently the Reverend Sherry. This has got to overwhelm this congregation with great grief, and I'm just hoping that my message today will be a little healing for you. Let's get this sermon going. First times are important for humans. A baby's first steps, a baby's first words, first time on a bicycle without training wheels, first kiss. I thought maybe we'll stop right there. But men and women, aren't last times also important for humans? Don't we have a way of focusing on things that won't ever happen again in our lives? I remember, for example, so very clearly my last year here, anticipating those never for us to be repeated times. And I can still feel, I know you're going to think I'm exaggerating, but I can still feel the hot wax dripping down past the paper guard onto my hand as I looked into your faces on Christmas Eve, my last Christmas Eve here, wreathed in candlelight as we sang Silent Night. And I do believe that there hasn't been a single Christmas Eve since in which the memory of this place hasn't sung a kind of silent obligato in my heart. And then when Easter came, my first Easter, without standing on a table out in the middle of Fort Street and saying, "He is risen!" I just knew that you knew that I would work that in somehow. My point is, don't you just know that for Jesus, sitting down for this last meal with his disciples must have been kind of tough on his heart. He had eaten over 1,000 meals with these men. This was his last. Jesus knew his enemies were out to get him, and he didn't have to be the Messiah to know that. They all knew that. The Romans were out to get him, the Jews were out to get him, and for some strange reason, one of his own was out to get him. And so it seemed to me that when Jesus sat down with his disciples for this last meal, a lot of things were working on his heart. And I want you to know that I warm to this particular passage because something like that happened in my own life emotionally. I remember my last meal with my father. He was retired and living in Florida. He got pancreatic cancer, and Virginia and I flew down to be with him and my mother and my sisters. On the night before we were all to fly back home, this was not the end of his life, but coming near to it, we had a kind of an evening meal. And it was a kind of a sad time for us because my dad, when he was well, could and did walk 15 miles a day. This was his hobby in retirement. And for this occasion, his focused effort was to walk 20 feet from his bedroom to the dining room where we were all gathered. And my mom went to get him, and he made it with great difficulty, but he made it. And I forget who among us said, "How about a toast?" And we were stunned because it was my dad who said, "Let me give it." He said 4 sentences. He said, "I'm glad you are all here." He said, "I have a wonderful family." He said, "I love you all." And he said, "It was good to the end." Now, it was that last one that really got to me because when it happened, when he said it, it wasn't good for him physiologically. He went from 142 to 114. But as time worked on me, I saw a kind of goodness that came out of all that. My father was thanking God for giving him this precious moment with all of us gathered together. And I do believe that my dad was kind of copying Jesus. He was helping to bring closure in our lives. And I like to think that he was doing for us in that living room, dining room, what Jesus did in the upper room. Now, what did Jesus mean when he said to them to love one another and to be a witness to him? Let me read it. John, according to John, says that Jesus said, "You are to love one another." Now, this wasn't a wish. It wasn't a hope. It was a command. And he said, secondly, that they weren't to be afraid of what happens when we die. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. And I want to spend just a few moments with you looking at the command to love and the promise of eternal life.